And I got, like food. So I don't know why, in some fit of inspiration, I tottered up to you and said,
Prince William opened the car trunk of Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, and what he did next will shock you. Everyone watching froze because no one expected his reaction. And it wasn't just curiosity. It revealed hidden tensions and unspoken rules within the royal family. Now everyone, including royal watchers, are asking, what's really going on behind the scenes? And why did this single act trigger such a strong reaction? Join us as we uncover the shocking truth about what William found in Camilla's son's car and why it left everyone speechless. The trunk that changed everything. It started as a routine visit. Tom Parker Bowles arrived at a royal residence, parking his car as usual. But Sergeant Whitmore, a vigilant royal guard, noticed something strange. The trunk was unusually heavy. Protocol required a security check, and when Tom initially resisted, insisting the contents were personal, tension began to rise. Queen Consort Camilla soon appeared, visibly concerned but annoyed, and the scene grew more charged. Then Prince William arrived. Without hesitation, he stepped in, taking control, deferring the guards, and issuing a firm command that the locked metal box in Tom's trunk must be opened. Tom, guarded and uneasy, complied. But no one expected what came next. Keep watching to find out what happened next. The box wasn't filled with cooking supplies, as Tom had claimed. Inside were stacks of handwritten pages, leather-bound diaries, and sealed envelopes, all in the unmistakable handwriting of the late Princess Diana. This shocked Williams. These weren't just keepsakes. They were highly personal, archived documents, thought to be lost forever. William immediately realized the gravity of the situation, that this was no routine security matter, but a family and royal crisis. The discovery left William in a difficult position. Pursuing a formal investigation risked dragging Tom and Camilla into public scandal, potentially shattering the fragile peace of the blended family. And ignoring it could invite leaks and accusations of royal cover-ups. Tom, meanwhile, admitted possession, but remained defiant about the source. Escalating tension further, William had to navigate a delicate path between protecting the crown's reputation and preserving family harmony. However, this incident wasn't just about the trunk. It revealed the complex, cautious relationship between William and Tom, which is shaped over decades by distance, respect, and intense media scrutiny. The diaries and documents showed not only personal vulnerabilities, but also the weight of history pressing on their interactions. To fully appreciate this history, the story of Prince William and Tom Parker Bowles did not begin with a dramatic confrontation or a sudden reveal, even though recent events like the moment William opened the trunk of Tom's car have made people wonder about the nature of their relationship. When that moment reached public attention, many assumed it reflected tension or hidden rivalry, yet the truth is far more nuanced. Their connection has always been shaped by circumstance, public scrutiny, and careful boundaries within a blended royal family. It is a bond formed less by daily interactions and more by shared experiences and respect. Understanding the significance of the trunk incident requires looking back at the environment in which both men grew up and the forces that influenced their lives long before their families were joined. From the outside, it may seem that the marriage of King Charles and Camilla would naturally create closeness between William and Tom. However, their relationship was never based on shared childhood or a common upbringing. William was born into the royal family, surrounded by public expectations, protocol, and intense scrutiny, while Tom grew up entirely outside that world. He developed his own career as a prominent food writer and critic, and chose deliberately to remain separate from the pressures and responsibilities of the monarchy. When the families merged, public curiosity focused on what many assumed would be a straightforward step, family dynamic. But the reality was far more complex. Their lives had been shaped in very different ways. And this context is essential to understand the interactions that followed. Here is the most interesting part. The roots of their connection lie not in friendship, social events, or shared interests, but in a mutual understanding of the challenges posed by public attention. Both men experienced a form of intrusion into their personal lives that most people cannot imagine. For William, media attention has been constant since his birth. For Tom, the intrusion began when his mother's relationship with Charles became public knowledge, bringing sudden and intense scrutiny. In both cases, their experiences were shaped by the same relentless media machinery that has long followed the British royal family, and these experiences formed the foundation of their cautious but respectful relationship. Tom Parker Bowles has been remarkably clear about his stance on royal involvement. He has consistently emphasized his choice to remain at a distance from William and Harry's world. In interviews with The Telegraph, Tom stated that he had learned long ago not to put himself into the affairs of William and Harry. He described this as a deliberate decision, acknowledging both the intensity of life within the monarchy and his desire to preserve his own private identity. He does not approach this separation with bitterness or resentment, but with understanding, recognizing that the pressures surrounding his stepbrothers are extraordinary. This position was reinforced in discussions with People magazine, where Tom clarified that while he is connected to the royal family through marriage, he has never claimed to be part of it. He acknowledged that he is a public figure to some degree because of his mother, but he has no formal responsibilities, royal titles, or duties. His life has remained independent, and he has maintained a careful boundary that reflects both respect for his stepbrother's positions and his own desire for privacy. This deliberate approach allows him to participate in family life selectively, without exposing himself to the relentless public gaze that William and Harry have faced all their lives. However, what truly binds William and Tom is a traumatic shared history with the media. During the 1990s, when Camilla's relationship with Charles became widely known, Tom was subjected to intense public attention. He later described this period as barbaric, recalling experiences such as being chased by paparazzi at dangerously high speeds and witnessing his mother being verbally pressured for reactions that would fuel media headlines. These events were frightening and invasive, and they left a lasting impression on him. Tom has remarked that he has experienced only a fraction of the challenges William and Harry have endured, yet even that fraction gave him an understanding of the pressures and vulnerabilities of living under public scrutiny. This shared exposure to intrusive media created an unusual connection between William and Tom, and unlike typical sibling relationships, it was built more on understanding external pressures than on close family bonds. Tom's sympathy for his stepbrothers comes from seeing how intense attention affects ordinary human life, and he recognized the challenges they faced because he had gone through his own encounters with invasive reporting and public speculation. This perspective allowed him to engage with William and Harry with respect and empathy, and it helped create a foundation for civil and functional interactions within the blended family. The family officially blended in 2005 when King Charles married Camilla, and this marriage formed a step-family unit that was visible to the public but carefully managed behind the scenes. Prince William and Prince Harry attended the ceremony along with Tom and his sister Laura, and this showed public acknowledgement of the new family structure. Despite these appearances, Tom and Laura did not receive royal titles, and they have never carried out royal duties. And this distinction matters because it reflects both the separation of personal and public roles, and the care taken to maintain boundaries that prevent confusion or overreach in the step-family relationship. The boundaries set by the family have always been respected, and William reportedly made sure that Camilla's children would not interfere with his own family life or responsibilities. Camilla herself approached her role within the household carefully, and she avoided imposing on William's decisions regarding his children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. By understanding the limits of her influence and keeping a respectful distance, Camilla supported a civil relationship between the families and helped preserve the autonomy of her stepsons. Tom's approach reflected this same principle, and he has chosen not to involve himself in royal matters while respecting the distinct roles of William and Harry as public figures. His career and personal life have remained his own, and he's avoided unnecessary engagement in royal controversies or decisions. And this deliberate separation is a key reason why the relationship between William and Tom has stayed stable and civil, despite public curiosity and press speculation. Their connection is functional and measured, and it is defined by mutual respect rather than personal closeness or friendship. Understanding this background helps explain why the moment William opened the trunk of Tom's car resonated so strongly with the public. And it was not just about what was inside the trunk. It symbolized the meeting of two very different worlds and represented a step in a relationship shaped by boundaries, respect, and shared awareness of public pressures. And the reaction from those present came not from surprise at the action itself, but from recognition of the historical context behind it. Stay tuned as we delve more into this. The scandal of Spare and the dangerous claims. Even though the blended royal family had long kept civil boundaries, the release of Harry's memoir, Spare, reignited intense public attention and controversy, and it put William, Camilla, and even Tom Parker Bowles in the spotlight. While Prince William had accepted Camilla's place in the family, that acceptance did not come without hesitation or resistance. And the memoir revealed private appeals both brothers made to their father, King Charles III, which reflected the emotional and moral complexity surrounding the decision to accept Camilla as the new queen consort. Harry confirms in the book that he and William urged their father not to marry Camilla, and this showed an honest portrayal of their initial discomfort and personal struggle, and William has never publicly denied these claims, which suggests he was trying to balance private feelings with public duty. This plea came directly from the trauma they experienced after losing their mother, Princess Diana, and from her very public concerns about Camilla. And in her famous 1990s interview, Diana called Camilla the third person in her marriage, which highlighted the tension and emotional strain within the royal family. For William and Harry, these past wounds shaped their initial resistance, even though they wanted their father's happiness to come first. And their reluctant consent was not about affection for Camilla, but rather a practical decision to support their father and preserve family harmony. This clearly shows how personal feelings and public responsibility have always influenced William's relationship with Camilla and his step-siblings. But here is where it gets even more interesting. The controversy in Spare went beyond personal feelings and included claims that directly challenged how the public saw Camilla, and Harry described her as a calculated figure who could navigate complex relationships with the British media to protect and advance her position, and he even suggested she was dangerous because of the connections she built in the press and her willingness to share information for favorable coverage. These claims were repeated in interviews, including a discussion with Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes, where Harry explained that trading information was part of what he saw as Camilla's strategic, sometimes manipulative approach to maintaining her public image. The implications of these allegations were serious, and William, who values privacy and has long been cautious of media interference, suddenly found his stepmother at the center of the very culture of leaks and planted stories that he and Harry have historically criticized. And according to the memoir, this strategy was not just personal, but connected to larger goals, including marriage and eventual public acceptance with King Charles's blessing. While Harry presented these claims as what he observed and experienced, they immediately sparked debate about loyalty, trust, and the line between public duty and private family life. However, Tom Parker Bowles also got involved in a way that was both factual and revealing, and his public defense of his mother directly contradicted the portrayal in Spare, which placed him in the middle of a sensitive family debate. On the News Agents podcast, Tom stated, "I think change happens, but I don't care what anyone says. This wasn't any sort of endgame. She married the person she loved, and this is what happened. And this shows his unwavering support for Camilla, while countering claims made by his stepbrother. And it emphasizes that her marriage was based on love rather than strategic ambition. By defending his mother, Tom also highlighted the complexities of family loyalty in the blended household. And while he keeps a respectful distance from royal matters, the memoir forced him to respond to clarify public misunderstanding, and his defense shows how he has helped moderate public perception and protect the family's reputation. And he consistently describes Camilla as motivated by love and duty rather than political maneuvering, which stands in sharp contrast to the memoir's depiction. However, despite Tom defending his mother, the truth in all this is that the royal family itself never truly accepted Camilla when she first entered the royal family. They believed Camilla was unsuitable as a future queen consort because she was not considered aristocratic enough, and she was seen as too experienced compared to the image of purity they wanted for the heir to the throne. However, to understand why the royal family saw Camilla as someone who is unfit for the role of a future queen, we need to go back to her early life, how she met Charles, and how their love turned into a royal scandal. So, stay tuned, because this is the most interesting part of all this. Camilla and her struggle to fit in. Camilla Rosemary Shand was born on July 17, 1947, in London, and she grew up in a family that was privileged but not part of the royal family, and her upbringing gave her access to upper-class social circles while keeping her outside the palace world. Her father, Major Bruce Shand, had been a decorated soldier during the war, and later he worked as a wine merchant, and her mother, Rosalind, came from a wealthy family with aristocratic roots because her father was the third Baron Ashcombe. This meant that Camilla's childhood was comfortable, and she split her time between the family's country estate in East Sussex and their London home in South Kensington. And from an early age, she stood out for her lively and confident personality. Unlike many who might have been shy in such circles, Camilla was fun-loving, self-assured, and comfortable around people, and she was educated both in England and abroad, attending schools in Switzerland and France, which gave her polish and charm. She was not known for being a brilliant student, but she developed a reputation for wit, an easy laugh, and the ability to capture attention in any room. And these qualities later made her a natural fit for royal circles, even though nobody could have predicted the role she would play in the monarchy's most dramatic chapters. In the late 1960s, Camilla started moving in the same social circles as Andrew Parker Bowles, who was a young army officer at the time and considered one of London's most eligible bachelors. And they began an on-and-off relationship that lasted for years, and Andrew's connections to the royal family brought Camilla into closer proximity to royals as well. Around 1970, she met Prince Charles at a polo match, and the story goes that their first encounter was relaxed and even playful. And Camilla is said to have teased Charles about her own great-grandmother, Alice Keppel, who had been the mistress of King Edward VII, Charles's great-great-grandfather. Whether entirely true or not, it showed her bold sense of humor, and it immediately caught Charles's attention. And unlike many young women he met, she was not intimidated by him and treated him as a man rather than a prince. And that natural ease between them quickly developed into something deeper. Charles was clearly smitten, and they grew closer. But the royal family did not see Camilla as a suitable bride for the heir to the throne. And Prince Philip and Lord Mountbatten, who had strong influence over Charles, reportedly believed he needed a wife who was not only aristocratic, but also pure in the eyes of the public. In their view, Camilla had dated too openly and did not have the spotless reputation expected of a future queen consort, and, at the time, the monarchy was under pressure to uphold traditional ideals, and Charles's choice was expected to reflect that. So, while Charles was sent overseas for naval duties, Camilla returned to a serious relationship with Andrew Parker Bowles, and by 1973 she married him in a grand ceremony attended by the Queen Mother, Princess Anne, and other royals. And Charles, still in love, was left heartbroken. And yet their connection never fully disappeared. Over the years, even as Camilla built a family with Andrew and Charles began dating others, including Lady Diana Spencer, they stayed close friends, and eventually, that bond reignited into something more. When Charles married Diana in 1981, the world celebrated what looked like a fairy tale union, and Diana was young, beautiful, and adored by the public. But behind the scenes, Charles's feelings for Camilla remained strong, and their contact never fully stopped, and rumors about their relationship began circulating almost immediately, even though the public had no proof. The palace denied the claims, and royal protocol tried to keep up the image of a happy marriage. But the truth was more complicated, and by the late 1980s, Diana herself knew that Camilla was still in Charles's life, and tensions rose, and Diana famously said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." And that statement captured the reality and made it clear that Camilla was at the heart of Diana's pain. Everything came to a head in 1993 with the scandal known as Camillagate, when a private telephone conversation between Charles and Camilla from 1989 was leaked to the press. And it was deeply embarrassing for the royal family, and the intimate nature of the remarks left no doubt about their relationship. And once the transcripts were published in tabloids, the affair was exposed in the most humiliating way possible. The public reaction was explosive, and people were shocked not just by the affair but by the crude and awkward intimacy of the conversation. And Charles faced widespread criticism for betraying Diana, while Camilla became the target of intense hatred. And overnight she went from a background figure to being painted as the villain in the Prince and Princess of Wales's troubled marriage. The media kept the scandal alive for years, and tabloids gave her cruel nicknames, including the infamous "the Rottweiler," which Diana herself reportedly used, and she was portrayed as manipulative, unattractive, and unworthy of Charles. Every detail of her life was scrutinized, and she was constantly compared to Diana, who had become the beloved people's princess. And while Diana was adored worldwide, Camilla was vilified as the woman who stole her happiness. The 1990s were brutal for Camilla, and she could barely appear in public without facing scorn, and her reputation sank to an all-time low. The monarchy itself was under pressure, and public trust suffered after Charles and Diana's messy divorce in 1996 and the years of tabloid scandals. And yet, through it all, Charles and Camilla's relationship did not end. And if anything, the challenges seemed to strengthen their bond, and they continued to see each other quietly and carefully as they tried to survive the storm of public anger. Many thought the scandal would end everything, that Charles would be forced to cut ties. But that never happened, and he stayed by her side, and she remained loyal to him, even as the world turned against them. And despite ridicule, anger, and constant attacks, Camilla stayed with Charles, and their relationship, formed in secrecy and tested by scandal, endured. Over time, the public mood began to soften, slowly and with hesitation, and after Diana's tragic death in 1997, the story began to change again, though Camilla's role remained complicated and often resented. Now, here is the most intriguing part: Camilla's path to rehabilitation and acceptance. After Diana's tragic death in 1997, the relationship between Charles and Camilla became even more complicated, and public grief over Diana was immense. And much of that grief spilled over into anger toward both Charles and Camilla. And many blamed them for the breakdown of Diana's marriage and saw them as partly responsible for her unhappiness. In those early years after the accident, Camilla had no choice but to stay in the shadows, because any appearance with Charles would have been seen as insensitive and disrespectful to Diana's memory. And for a long time, the idea of her ever being accepted by the public seemed impossible. But time has a way of softening feelings, even if very slowly. And while many still viewed her with suspicion, small changes began happening within the royal family, and those changes laid the groundwork for her eventual rehabilitation. One of the clearest signs came from Prince Philip, who was known for his blunt advice and straightforward opinions. And he had never been shy about sharing his thoughts on family matters. And it was noted that during Charles's troubled marriage to Diana, Philip wrote letters urging his son to try to make the marriage work for the sake of the children and the monarchy. And Philip had always believed in duty over personal happiness, and he expected Charles to keep trying. However, Philip was also a realist, and when it became clear the marriage could not be repaired, he reportedly told Charles something significant, and he expressed that if he could not make it work with Diana, then he should do the honorable thing and marry Camilla. This was not a casual remark, because Philip understood how controversial Camilla was at the time, and the fact that he said this showed he recognized that Camilla was not going away, and his words hinted at a gradual acceptance of her presence in Charles's life, and also of the reality that the monarchy would eventually have to face their relationship. Even with Philip's reluctant acknowledgement, the path toward public acceptance was far from simple, and Camilla was still seen by many as the woman who had caused Diana pain, and the press was merciless in their coverage. And this is where the so-called charm offensive began. Royal aides realized that if Charles and Camilla were ever to have a future together, public opinion needed to change, or at least soften. And so a careful, deliberate public relations campaign was planned. A key figure in this effort was Mark Bolland, a royal aide who worked closely with Charles, and he understood that the public would not accept Camilla overnight, so he designed a slow, cautious strategy. The idea was to gradually introduce her into public life in ways that seemed natural rather than forced, and instead of grand appearances, there were staged moments where she would be seen supporting Charles at private functions or casual outings, and the press was quietly invited to cover these events, and over time, the tone began to shift. One of the biggest hurdles, however, was Charles's sons, William and Harry, and after Diana's death, their feelings toward Camilla were understandably complex, and it was not easy for them to accept the woman who had played a role in their parents' marriage breakdown. And royal aides knew that without the boys' acceptance, the public would never accept her either. So the process of introducing Camilla to the princes was done with extreme care, and private meetings were arranged, and the pace was slow, giving them time to adjust. And gradually, the relationship between Camilla and the boys improved, though it was built on respect rather than emotional closeness in the early years. This careful approach sent a message to the public that if William and Harry could accept her, perhaps others could too. And the PR campaign continued step by step, and Camilla began appearing in more public settings, and her image started to soften as stories highlighted her loyalty to Charles and her quieter qualities, rather than the harsh caricatures of the tabloids, and she was no longer only the Rottweiler of the 1990s headlines. Instead, she began to be seen as someone who had endured years of ridicule but remained devoted to Charles through it all. And it was a slow change, but it worked. The real turning point came in 2005, when Charles and Camilla finally married, and their wedding was deliberately modest compared to the fairy tale spectacle of Charles and Diana's in 1981, and the ceremony took place at Windsor Guildhall as a civil service, which was unusual for a future king. And because both were divorced, the Church of England faced a delicate situation, and as head of the church, Queen Elizabeth II could not attend the civil ceremony, nor could Prince Philip. Their absence was noted, but it was balanced by what followed, and after the civil ceremony, a service of prayer and dedication was held at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, and the Queen and Philip attended and hosted a reception afterward, sending a clear message of support. And while the civil ceremony could not be formally endorsed, the service and celebration showed the royal family's blessing, and this marked a major step forward for Camilla. For the first time, she was publicly recognized as Charles's wife, and the royal family was seen supporting them. Another key part of her rehabilitation came through her charity work, And far from being a background figure, Camilla began taking on causes that mattered to her and the royal family, and one of the most significant was her involvement with the Royal Osteoporosis Society. And this was personal because Camilla's mother and grandmother had suffered from the disease, and she had seen the devastating effects firsthand, and she made it her mission to raise awareness, promote early diagnosis, and support research into better treatments, and her personal connection gave her work authenticity that people respected. Beyond osteoporosis, she also championed literacy, encouraging children and adults to read more and supporting libraries and book clubs. And she backed initiatives against domestic violence, giving survivors a voice and shining a light on a hidden issue. And through these causes, the public began to see another side of her, not just as Charles's partner, but as a woman deeply committed to real problems affecting ordinary people. Over time, these efforts helped change public perception, and the narrative shifted slowly but steadily. And Camilla moved from being the vilified figure of the 1990s to someone who was respected for her loyalty, dedication, and charitable work, and her relationship with Charles, though still scrutinized, was increasingly accepted, and the combination of careful public appearances, family acceptance, and meaningful charitable involvement created a path toward rehabilitation and eventual recognition in the monarchy. And by proving her commitment and showing a sincere interest in helping others, Camilla gradually carved out her own identity and gained legitimacy both within the royal family and in the eyes of the public. So, knowing Camilla's difficult path, do you believe Prince Philip's final acceptance of her as future queen was an act of duty or an act of love? And after Harry called Camilla dangerous, was Tom right to defend his mother? Drop it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.